but what I want to talk about is Sandyron is sort of a bipolar stream. It's got two personalities, if you want. It's got the open stream that still runs through the park, which we're looking at now in this picture, and then it's got the hidden part of the stream, which is the majority of the watershed. And both of these sections of stream have their own unique problems, not unique problems, but their own problems. And I want to talk about some of the history of the stream, show you some pictures, show you some maps, also talk about the Holmesburg Waterworks, which is not far from the mouth of the creek at Pennypack Creek, and just share some interesting things. I'm assuming that a lot of people here know Northeast Philadelphia and will be interested in some of these things that I've uncovered. So besides Fred and Roland and Jack, who I've known for almost 20 years now, probably more than 20 years, I also want to thank Lou Leskis, who has a photographic memory for Northeast Philadelphia buildings, and he was able to help me locate and identify a number of the photographs that I'm going to show you today, and also all the other people from the water department and from various institutions who have allowed me to use their photographs. So probably looked at this picture of this concrete bridge long enough. But so as I was thinking about this morning and how to start, I was thinking if I was a person who was just coming to Pennypack Park and was walking up the trail and I discovered the mouth of Sandyron, I was thinking of what would I think as I walked up the creek? What would my experience be? So there's a number of things. There's some behind all those weeds in that picture. There's a concrete structure that none of us were able to figure out what that was. There are various dams that carry sewers across the creek. These dams used to be underneath the ground, and erosion has exposed them, which reminds me to say that at the end, I do want to talk about some of the stream restoration plans that the water department has for the lower open section of the creek, partly to prevent the infrastructure, or protect the infrastructure. There are various pipes, probably relating to the old Holmesburg Waterworks that are in the creek and sort of go nowhere now. There's a huge erosion problem. The creek has no connection to any floodplains, so the only place the water has to go is down, and it digs the channel deeper and deeper and wider every time we get a heavy rain. I wish I could have been out there Monday and seen what the creek looked like, because from the looks of the trash that's hung up way up high, 5-6 feet high, it must be quite a scary sight when you get a heavy rain. Also, it's compromising a lot of the trees and other plant life along the creek. The water is a little murky. It was the day we were there, and probably is fairly frequently. There's a lot of invasive plants, as there are in any woodland area, probably in this country, let alone in this region. There's a lot of graffiti on the Ryan Avenue Bridge, on the flanks of it and underneath it. And so once you get across Ryan Avenue, then you either you have to bushwhack through a lot of thorns, or you can drive around to the intersection of I was taught how to say this the other day, Browse, Lexington, and the Boulevard. Park your car, and you can see where this creek ends up, this open part. It ends up in a concrete channel. This is Roland Williams looking out over the channel downstream. And then if you turn and look upstream, what you see is it enters a pipe, a giant pipe, 13 feet high. And that's the end of the living section of Sandyron. And I'll also talk some point, it might be in 1 minute, depending on what the next slide is. This show is that new, so I haven't rehearsed it 100 times. Like some of the other things some of you might have heard me talk about. But I'll also talk about what this gate is there for in the pipe. So to give this some context, the history in the history of Philadelphia, just an overview of how we've treated our streams, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I like to show this series of 3 maps that basically tell the story in very, very graphically. This is the historic streams map, the map that we've come up with. This is the stream lines are based mostly on the 1843 Ellet map, for those of you who know old maps of Philadelphia, but also we've got for Center City and some other areas where the Ellet map did not have streams. We got them off of other sources. We've named all the streams we can. One of the things that got Fred and I started on this idea to do a talk on the streams of the Northeast was trying to give them some permanent names through the United States Geological Service. It's not as easy as we thought. It's a political thing. It's all sorts of things, but that got us started. So all the names I've been able to find for creeks are on this map. You might not be able to read them all at the resolution that this is. So this is a historic streams map. I'm kind of proud of this new version, you know, and it's very, very detailed, and as you'll see when we zoom in on it. So this is what we had, and this is what's left. These are the streams that are left on the surface of the city. And you can see that Northeast Philadelphia still has most of its streams, and that's because by the time the area north of Pennypack Creek was developed, the city had decided that burying streams and putting them in pipes and covering up the valleys and building them up with houses and buildings was not really cost effective. It's not a cost effective way to raise tax money. It costs too much. So they stopped doing it in the Northeast Philadelphia. But Sandyron was about the last creek that was put underground. And so where did all these creeks go? I'm sort of begging the question, is they went into the sewer system. The sewers were laid in their valleys. The city sewer system is about 3,200 miles of pipes. You know, they're as small as 8-inch terracotta pipes to as big as 24 feet, where you can drive 2 dump trucks through them and have plenty of room on top and on the sides. If you think of the sewer system as a creek system, they get bigger as they get towards the 3 sewage treatment plants, where all the sewage goes in dry weather. More than half of the sewers in the city are combined sewers, where they carry sewage and stormwater in the same pipe. But the Sandyron Creek sewer, the Sandyron sewer shed, as we call it, is a separate sewer system. And where sewage and stormwater are carried in separate pipes. And both of these systems have their problems. The combined sewers will overflow in wet weather into the streams that they used to just empty out into day and night. Before the sewage treatment plants were built in the 1950s. I'm trying to give a 2-minute version of an hour-long talk here, just trying to give you some background to the system. Before the sewage treatment plants were built, all of these sewers used to just empty out into the rivers and streams of the city, and it was horrific pollution. But even now, the combined sewers have to discharge into the streams in wet weather. Otherwise, the sewage treatment plants will be flooded out. Sandyron system, being a separate system, it's got its own problems that I'll talk about in a few minutes. So here's a detail of this historic streams map showing Sandyron, and here's what most of Sandyron ended up being. And as I said, it's a separate sewer system, and that means that the combined sewer system, all the stormwater, all the sewage flows in one big pipe. and that pipe is intercepted at the creeks or at the rivers and carried to the sewage treatment plant, except in wet weather. In a separate sewer system, that shouldn't be a problem, ideally, because the stormwater all goes into one pipe. It comes off the roof, it comes off the streets, it goes into one bigger pipe, and the sewage from houses, from the toilet, from any used water, which is what sewage is, goes into a smaller pipe, usually underneath the stormwater pipe in case it leaks. You don't want it getting into the stormwater pipe, which then would pollute the stream. Well, unfortunately, in the Sandyron watershed, there are untold number of cross connections. And that means that people have basically, if you think of having your toilet connected to the storm sewer, the stormwater sewer is emptied right into the stream. So you don't want anything going in there. You don't even want trash or dog waste or anything going in there other than water. And so here in this little watershed, we have many buildings are cross connected, and that could be either just by mistake, because the stormwater sewer is usually on top of the sanitary sewer, so it might be the first one that the plumber sees, and so he just taps into it. Or it could be just people not knowing what they're doing, or it could just be laziness or maliciousness. But in any case, there's a lot of pollution going into the storm sewer, which goes into Sandyron, and the water department intercepts it at that outfall. And I'll if that doesn't make sense, I'll go back to that in a minute, in a few minutes. But there's this. Usually you don't have to intercept a storm sewer, but there's so much pollution going into it that they actually have they try to capture that before it gets into the stream. So the Sandyron watershed, just some facts and figures about the watershed. The historic, and these were from Margaret Rickey, who's a GIS expert at the water department, who came up with all these numbers for me and a number of the maps that you'll see in shortly. But 7 3/4 miles of historic stream. Some of the larger historic streams in the city, like the Wingahocky Creek, which is now completely underground except for a little piece, were 30 miles of streams. This one is a fairly small stream, and honestly, even the 0.7 miles that are still flowing on the surface, they could have easily been put into a pipe and been buried also, if it had been done. If this area of the city had developed earlier, that probably would have happened, and it would have been just a sewer flowing all the way down through the little dogleg of the Sandyron extension of Pennypack Park, as it was officially called. So the watershed is 2.5 square miles. The watershed is all that includes the sewer shed, all the sewers that drain into that stormwater outfall that empties into the open area of the creek. And there, in the 2.5 square miles, there's 9,000 properties. And the reason I give all these numbers is just to show you the complexity and the amount of infrastructure that goes even into just a small little 2.5 square mile area of a city that's 130 square miles. So you have 50 miles of stormwater pipes and 58 miles of sewer pipes, sanitary sewers. I don't know why they're called sanitary, since they carry the unsanitary part of the flow. So there's more than 100 miles of sewer pipes, more than 2,500 manholes, 1,600 street inlets, all in this 2.5 square mile area, which is basically what all that is accomplishing is draining the stormwater out of the neighborhoods and draining the sewage out of the neighborhoods and making the neighborhoods livable. Because without that kind of drainage, you couldn't really live in a city in as dense a way as we do. And the water department also has the added responsibility of bringing drinking water in, clean water in, and we bring the clean water in and we take the dirty water away. And so that's what the water department does in a nutshell. Um, so there are a lot of ways to look at a watershed. This is an aerial view of the watershed, and you can see the faint pinkish line there is the outline of actually the sewer shed. It doesn't include the lower part that's in the open, but it includes all the sewers that drain in and basically follows the historic stream watershed, the historic watershed, because the sewers are following along the streams, as you see, and draining in the same topography, more or less. So there's also just a way to look at it as a map. You know, the Sandyron flows from, as I said, from the sewers starts at Roosevelt Boulevard, about where Hartel Street crosses, and goes all the way up. The sewer system goes all the way up to the Montgomery County line in Fox Chase, and has various streams. You know, Ron Avenue is part of it, Castor Avenue, and other streams. Going back to this picture, I don't know whether it's easy to see here or here, but you can see here that the Pennypack Creek watershed on the north side of the creek was pretty much developed in a more suburban way, with curving streets and cul-de-sacs and things like that. But the area developed earlier on the south side, including the Sandyron watershed, was mostly followed the city grid. And so one clue in any neighborhood I'm trying to get my keyboard back here to use my well, one clue to an area that used to have streams flowing through it is when you see curving streets going across a grid. The developers didn't like having curving streets. They made odd little parcels that were hard to sell. And so wherever you see that, you probably have a street that has carrying a big sewer underneath it, such as Glendale Avenue right there, and Hartel there, and then Somerdale, and then Knapfel Street. So that's always a hint. And in other neighborhoods, it's easy to see that also. Sometimes you have something like Bustleton Avenue, which is over here, which is just an old turnpike that was just following the terrain. So you have to know your old turnpikes before you can start using that theory of finding creeks. So here's the historic streams laid over this watershed, and they don't line up exactly. That could be partly due to changes in the channels. It's probably more due to the inaccuracies of GIS overlays. But you basically can see that faintly, I made this a little too faint, but you can see the streets that the sewer follows over, where the sewer is underneath the streets. Now, it took a while for some of the earliest plans of Northeast Philadelphia. They didn't even care about the streams. They just assumed that all the streams were going to be put underground. This is an 1873 plan. They just laid the grid over this piece of Sandyron as if the stream in its valley didn't exist. They just figured they would deal with it when they had to. It's not that I think what this indicates to me is that they assumed that this creek was going to be put underground even as early as the 1870s, because it was just that small and insignificant in the engineer's mind. Sometimes when I'm doing research into these streams, a map like this that's so brightly colored, until Fred and Roland brought me out to the stream a couple of weeks ago, this was about as colorful as I could imagine. Sandyron is the dog leg down here. You can see that originally the city plans, this is a little later, this is 1908, they had planned basically the park was going to end right about what now is more or less Bryan Avenue, and Hartel Street was just going to hug the edge of the park, as streets hug the edge of the park everywhere. But so there are also old real estate atlases that show the creek going across the grid. These are two that are overlaid. This is 1895. And the Sandyford Post Office was the name of a post office in a lot. It looks like that's along Bustleton Pike. And I know this chat is going to probably be filled with text correcting every mistake that I made, which is good because I can fix it the next time I give this talk. But the reason I mentioned Sandyford is because some people sometimes they think the creek is called Sandyford Creek, which it's not. It's Sandyron on all the maps. Sometimes people even call it Sandyron Creek, and that's incorrect too. That's actually redundant because a run is a small stream. So to call it a run creek is like calling it a street road. That would be, well, no, we do have a street road, don't we? So I guess that's not a good example, but you know what I'm trying to say. So here you see this is sort of oriented not quite off north just to fit it all in, but running all the way up. And then in 1910 they started laying out streets so they could build the sewer that would capture this. And you can see the streets are laid out even down farther down below the boulevard where the creek now runs in the open. This was before this land was dedicated as parkland, this little dog leg of the park, or appendix as I like to call it. It's sort of a neglected little appendix of Pennypack Park that it's actually interesting and in some ways beautiful that more people should appreciate. But it's a big park. It's a big park system in Philadelphia. This is a map I made by overlaying the 1927 atlas. And so you can see here, as the creeks are put underground, as the creeks put in the sewer, the houses are built up next to them. And the only section of the creek here that was actually in the sewer is where my cursor is here at this point. And so you can see and maybe this point too in 1927, and maybe over here because that's where the houses are built. But anywhere the creek is in the open, building is not going to be done because the creek is there's a valley there that needs to be filled in. The creek is going to be put in the sewer, so developers would just wait until the city did this work. And for the city, it was worth doing this work because it would pay off in the increased tax revenues. Basically, you're looking at a plan like this. All of the unbuilt spaces are paying farm or rural rates of taxes, which is much lower than the city rate that the developed parts take. So the cost of building these big sewers was always worth it for the city until it wasn't in the 1920s, I suppose, when labor and materials got too expensive. So there are a number of the pictures of the park of the creek involve pictures that were taken of bridges over the creek by the city surveyors who were in charge of the Bureau of Surveys, was in charge of building the bridges. This is a picture of probably almost the farthest reach of the creek at Oxford Pike. It's just a tiny little stream, and I love looking at these pictures and just looking at the workmen. A lot of these pictures are you can zoom way in on them, and I even just noticed the boy sitting here by the edge of the screen. This is a picture of the Ryan Avenue Bridge over Sandyron. This was built in 1929, but it probably the road to and from it was probably not built for a while after that. In the background, what you see is the smokestack of the Holmesburg Waterworks. And there's no graffiti on it yet. Here's another view from 1950, the same bridge. And a view from the top looking up Ryan Avenue toward Lexington. And so the open land you see on both sides of this up to about here are all part of Pennypack Park now. So this is a picture of the bridge running underneath Dungan Road near Ron Street, where the creek is running underneath Dungan Road. And I had a photograph of it. I just forgot to put it in here. But there's still a right of way where the sewer that captured this creek runs through, and it looks, there's a power line in it. I think it's across from a shopping center, and it was pointed out to me today by Lou Leskus that I might not want to use this picture because there are obscenities scrawled on this bridge in 1950. So graffiti is one of the perennial things whenever people build things that have clean, writable surfaces. I guess, for thousands of years, people have been scrawling on them. This is a view showing how rural this part of the city was, even in 1950. The car, I think, is parked on top of where that bridge would be carrying the creek underneath this, well, this dirt road here, Dungan Road, not even paved at this point. So this is another picture from within the watershed, and sometimes I can get carried away, not so much with this one, but there's so many details in these pictures, especially these are pictures from the phillyhistory.org website of the Philadelphia City Archives. And through the water department, I have access to high resolution pictures. I don't have to pay the $10 or $15 of the charge for them. So I've been asking for a lot of them, and these pictures have so many details in them. It's just sometimes a shame not to zoom in on them. So these houses all are still standing, and the trolley, of course, I hope I got the trolley route right. But I'm sure there'll be a chat if I didn't. The trolley is gone, but it seems like Castor Avenue is the full width of that street now. Took over where the trolley ran. I think that there's a sort of a wetland here on the right in this field, and wetlands, it was often where public buildings were built. It was land that was maybe harder to sell, and so they built schools and parks and playgrounds in there. So just these houses, as I said in the caption, are on Griffith and Borbeck Avenue. And then here's what this looks like today, looking from Hartel Avenue, I think up over the school, which is in the vacant lot, and there are houses now in the front of that, fronting on Hartel also. So again, back to bridges, this is the Bustleton Avenue Bridge over Sandyron. There are a number of pictures taken of this bridge before. Obviously, this is in 1960, 10 years after this picture was taken. You see there are fewer trees. They're cutting down trees, as always happens when development is going on. New houses are going up, but I think they still haven't solved the problem of whatever's happening here. The water pooling up. Maybe the sewer wasn't big enough, or I haven't been able to research it. Maybe Lou Leskus, who knows this picture better than I do, can put something in the chat about what's happening here. I think the sewer might have already been built at this point, but maybe it hadn't been. 1960 is a little late, but I'm not sure. Not being at the office of the water department, being at home, I don't have access to the database of plans that would have allowed me to answer that kind of question. Just more pictures from this intersection of Hartel, and you can see all these new houses going up, and probably if in an aerial view, you would see a lot of them still standing, looking down the hill. So you can see even in Run Watershed, which is fairly flat. You do have hills and valleys. And if, as you're following along these curving streets, usually they're at the bottom of a valley, you know, where the water is draining down into them. So they're following over the old stream valley. So this picture was labeled before. This is before something, before they fixed that drainage problem. And then the after, you know, a few months later, this is December 59, this is August 60, then I think we're looking a little bit up from the bottom of the hill, but also you can see the trees are all cut down. And the creek might not be after Sandyron was buried in the sewer, it might be after they fixed the sewer, I'm not sure. And it's almost unbelievable to think that this is what this intersection looks like today, but that's what we're looking at. So so this is where I got a little carried away this morning, and probably why I was rushing at 10 of 7 to finish this talk. One of the reasons, anyway. This is just a picture again in this watershed area, showing, you know, the drainage coming down the street. There's not even a sewer built in this street yet, it looks like, and just some houses. And it turns out that the store we were looking at on the left is still standing, and the houses that we were looking at are all standing. Castor Highlands, as this development is called, seems to specialize in that kind of house I'll show you in a second. This Unity store, I spent too much time searching in newspaper databases trying to find this particular store. Instead, all I found was that the Unity store, from all the advertisements for a Unity stores for sale in the 1940s, could make from $300 to $800 a week, and you could buy one for about $6,000 to $8,000. And they also had baseball teams that they sponsored. But I didn't find anything about this particular store other than that it would have been a grocery store, probably had a meat section and that kind of thing. But this this building is still standing. It's now a golf groomer. Same with these houses, they're still standing. This would be Hartel Avenue. And you can see the style of house. There was a peaked roof and a flatter roof, a peaked roof and a flatter roof, and that was repeated all throughout this development. If you look at Google Street View, you can see this kind of house. Or if you live in the neighborhood, if you drive around, you're probably familiar with it. If you're Lou Leskis, you probably dream about these houses. So then I started researching advertisements for Castor Highland and found these are more or less the same houses. Then I discovered that there was going to be the Albert Greenfield Company, which is a big real estate company in Philadelphia, still auctioned off the land in 1923. And then I found these advertisements where here the auctioneer is actually going to fly up to North Philadelphia from, you probably have to take a trolley all the way down to South Philadelphia to get on an airplane to fly in, but it makes for a fun advertisement to hold the auction for the lots. Basically, they hadn't built any houses, you were buying lots. Other ads, the auction was held under this tent, and in this ad we see the tent in a photograph, an aerial photograph. They were selling these lots to probably mostly to speculators or builders. I can't imagine being an individual buying a lot in a place that looked like this. Now you can see here that all the infrastructure has been put in by the city at this point. You know, again, because it was worth the city's while, worth the payback time for the investment in the infrastructure, in the streets, in the water, sewer, and gas pipes was the payback time could be fairly quick on these projects. From the tax revenues, all the new houses that went up, and here's what that intersection looks like today. And you can see these two stores among the first buildings being built in this neighborhood, storefronts are still standing down here. One of them is the best in town pizza, which reminds me that I haven't had dinner yet, so I have to keep talking faster. Jack, you should give me cut me off or something if I'm, just give me a high sign. I'll try to pay attention, or just stop my sharing for a second if I'm going way over. But
You're asking the wrong person. I could listen to you all night. So
okay, all right, okay. So what happened? How did this go from farmland, from open land to basically a very dense residential neighborhood? And the answer is they let the engineers take over. And the engineers, by engineers I mean the creek. Talking about the creek specifically, the creeks became an engineering problem. How big do we have to build the sewer? How, what are the radiuses on this? There are all sorts of, if you can read this drawing, you're pretty good. I can read that there's a sewer here. This is a big sewer. And then since it's a separate sewer system with a stormwater and a sanitary sewer, there are two separate manholes, one to access each of the different aspects of the system. So I think I've talked about most of this. The health concerns were not so much an issue in the 20th century when the Sandyron sewer was built. It was more encouraging the real estate development. Sandyron being one of these streams, these pennypack tributaries up here, this being the pennypack on this topographical model. But it also was the cheapest way to provide gravity drainage by building your sewers in a valley that was already carrying a stream that was flowing by gravity. So, those two things led to the demise of many streams before it became too expensive, or the city planners realized that putting parks around the stream valleys might actually be an amenity to neighborhoods, which it is, I think, in Northeast Philadelphia, even if the streams are somewhat neglected north of Pennyback Creek. So here's the picture I was this is the matching picture of that drawing, showing this elliptical sewer, probably I think about 11 feet high, it will carry Sandyron once it's completed. They usually diverted the creek around these work sites by digging ditches until the sewers were done, and then they would divert them into the sewer. Here's looking on Glendale Avenue from Castor Avenue, and that pipe going over the big sewer is either a sanitary sewer or a water pipe, a water distribution main. I'm not sure. And again, you can see the twin manholes in the background and the other manholes here. And once this pipe is built, there will be some amount of fill, maybe 5 or at least probably, well, it'll be filled up to the top of the manholes. So about 5 feet of fill on top of this. In some parts of the city, there would be more fill, like in this particular section of the Sandyron sewer. These are pictures I didn't have a chance to get high resolution from, that Lou Leskis introduced me to just in the past week, and that's not enough time to get high resolution. This is looking up, I think this is actually looking south on Langdon Street, not north, or looking north from, I don't know where this is. It's looking up Langdon Street, which is one of the curvy streets that carries the sewer. And what we're looking at is the base of the sewer. You can see in the background here the pipe being built. We're looking at what they call the invert, the bottom of the sewer. And these weird pipes along here are just sections of pipe that I think are part of the sanitary sewer that's being laid to the right of that pipe. This is according to Lou, one of the last sections of the Sandyron sewer built in 1952, carrying it under the railroad, the Reading Railroad. If that's wrong, someone please correct me. And up into Fox Chase. The creek ran across Dungan Road in that right of way I talked about, and then took a left turn along the railroad embankment, and then went underneath at Naples Street in this huge sewer. It's probably at least 12 feet in 12 feet wide. So there are a lot of the city. The city has a lot of plans of various sewers. We have a database of, it must be 100,000 plans by now. It started out in the 90s at 40,000, but we've been creating new plans, and they all get scanned and put into a database that's now become very elaborately searchable. And you can search it by clicking at a point on a map, and it'll show you every plan we have that has that particular point on it. So these are just a few of the plans of Sandyron. This is showing Sandyron from the more or less from the Pennypack Creek and running up toward the boulevard. This is Bryan Avenue Bridge. Here's the Pennypack, the Holmesburg Waterworks. This is I think from about 1925. And the companion to that is this plan that continues all the way up to the boulevard, to the Lexington, Browse, and the boulevard, and in this channel, which is artificial. And when it crossed the boulevard, it entered the sewer continued. This is a 13 by 13 foot diameter sewer that continued along Hartel and then ran into Glendale. And I just include all of this just because it's interesting, all but cubic yards. And you know, the people who did this work had to account for everything, and the check mark means that the inspector on the job, or the person, the assistant engineer, or whoever signs off on this plan, says yes, all of this was done, and yes, they can get paid for that. That's still more or less the way things happen today. And so all of these numbers along here indicate where individual buildings are going to be connecting into this sewer along that street. Now, it was interesting the way the sewer was, when the Roosevelt Boulevard was built, which, as I think I showed you, early plans didn't have the boulevard on it, and so they didn't take into account the boulevard doing what it does, which is basically following for probably a good 1,000 feet or so, 2 city blocks anyway, 2 or 3 city blocks following the course of Sandy Run. The way they dealt with that was by, here's the creek, and they took it and they put it in a pipe right along the edge of the boulevard, and then they built the new channel. It was supposed to be a temporary channel, as I'll show you in a second, but it became a permanent channel. And the reason they built that channel was so they could divert the flow of the creek, so they could then build the boulevard, fill it up, and build the road without having to worry about a creek flowing down the middle of it. These are just some sewer drawings. You know, a lot of these, this is the black and white version, but a lot of these are in color, and some of them, this is a little later from 1926, but some of the early ones, you know, every brick will be carefully delineated, and every rock. It's just the draftsmanship of some of these plans is amazing. This one I show, I'm not going to try to explain what's going on in that intersection, but just to show you how complex some of these plans are, and well, you always hear about the crazy underground, what's going on underground. just, you know, it's almost too crowded in some places. And that looks like a very, very busy underground under that intersection. There's sewer, and there's lots of different sewers. There's lots of streets coming in, and so here's a picture of that temporary diversion of the creek. And why they didn't just say this is going to be how the creek flows at that point, I don't know. Maybe that was the way they got. It wasn't like there was any environmental concerns in 1910 when this plan was made. And this became the permanent bed of the creek. The concrete channel that I showed earlier at the beginning. And it's been built and rebuilt a number of times since 1910. So here again, it's just showing the boulevard, you know, and the creek and the sewer that it's how it's going to be dealt with. So I think I'm getting toward the end here. These pictures are to remind me that I have to get out of this and into not yet. Okay. This is just a picture showing the reservoir for the waterworks, Sandyron. But I have to get out of this in a minute to go to it. So here's an interesting plan. This was the plan that actually put the Sandyron extension on the map of Pennypack Park. You can see these weird boundary lines. Boundary lines here that are this land that was either purchased or donated, and put this little dog leg of an extension onto the park. Otherwise, it would have been built up. The creek would have been put underground up until the edge of the park, which would have been beyond Ryan Avenue, and then it would have come out in the open there. And streets would have been built across here, and this whole little section would have been developed. So here again is this is, I think, my reminder of to switch to another. Just bear with me for a second. I was going to put into PowerPoint a whole history of the waterworks, the Holmesburg waterworks, but Fred Moore, in response to inquiry from the water department people who are working on a restoration of the open part of Sandyron, the lower part below Ryan Avenue, put together a PDF that I'm going to try to get to now, and just to share that with you. And I think I think I'm okay to say that anybody who wants this, and I will add other things to it before we send it out. Anybody who wants this document, this is a PDF. We'd be glad to share it with anybody who wants it. But I'll just go through it a little quickly. You know, the Holmesburg Waterworks was one of several waterworks in Northeast Philadelphia, which, and I'm going to try to get this in the full screen mode. Okay. It was one of several waterworks that were developed around the 1880s, and that the city purchased in 1924. Purchased the works and the pipes and everything. But you can find references to this on maps, as I've been showing you, or you can find in the manual of the American Waterworks Association. They did an annual yearbook where the Holmesburg Waterworks, even if they couldn't spell it, they included it. There are also Board of Health reports that I'll append to this document that talk about the waterworks. Basically, the waterworks was taking water out. Some of those, we have pictures of the pipes. Maybe I'll even put them on this, that are in the stream, because those pipes actually are going to be removed in the stream restoration. they were drawing water out of Sandyron during dry weather when there was not enough flow in Sandyron. They had another pipe that went all the way down to the Pennypack and was drawing water from the Pennypack. They had it in a basin where the mud would settle out, and then they ran it through filters. By the 1920s, they were filtering it, as all the city water supply was, the city's public water supply. And then they were piping it to a standpipe, which was not right there. It was a mile away, somewhere up on a hill nearby. And then from the standpipe being basically a narrow reservoir, then it would flow from the top of the standpipe. The pressure created by that column of water would then force water into the mains by gravity. And there's information in here and in some of the other information I'll put onto this of what kind of machinery they were using. They're using steam engines, what kind of filters, other things. Fred basically found all the maps that showed this, and he even found the only photograph that any of us have seen, other than that picture of the smokestack that I showed early on, looking over Ryan Avenue. So as I said, I'll add to this and make it available to Jack, and then it can be made available. Or if you wanted to you can put your email in the chat. We can respond to it that way, however you want. Also, when my website phillyh2o.org gets revamped, I can put this up on that too, all this information. So there's one more thing I just want to mention. And that's the stream restoration that the water department is going to be doing, and that involves going to another little PowerPoint. Basically, the water department is concerned that a lot of the infrastructure along the lower part of Sandyron is being degraded. On the bottom left here, and the bottom right, you can see stormwater outfalls that are just being undermined and washed away. In the center here, someone is standing on one of the interceptor sewers that runs along Sandyron, carrying the sanitary sewage from the upstream neighborhoods down into the Pennypack interceptor, and then ultimately to the Northeast Water Pollution Control Plant. That's being exposed and degraded. There are manholes that are not doing well. So they want to get in and somehow control the flow of water. Taking trees down. Just creating a lot of problems. For the infrastructure, which is the only way the water department can get involved in parkland, is to solve infrastructure problems. But while we're solving the infrastructure problems, we also want to try to create something more beautiful. And this is a very idealized version of what this could look like. The idea is to try to connect Sandyron back, this lower part of Sandyron, back into its floodplain. So, so there actually is something to slow the water down, something to spread the water out, so it doesn't just dig a channel deeper and deeper every time. This, you saw the pictures of the silt of the banks. This is going to involve a lot of engineering, a lot of moving of earth, a lot of probably losing some of the trees along here. But I think it would ultimately make this lower part of the creek much healthier, and also it will make the Pennypack healthier and the Delaware River healthier, because that's where it's where this water is all heading. So this was described as a very idealistic view of what this might look like. But the water department has restored a stream, took a stream out of a sewer in West Philadelphia in Morris Park, a branch of Indian Run, took it out of the sewer and actually did a beautiful job of it. You would never know really that this was not the original stream bed. If you saw it, if you go out there and see it. So anyway, that project is still in design, and then it has to get approved and then bid. And ideally, if this goes ahead, this would be sometime in late 2022 or early 2023 that construction would start. So anybody who lives in the neighborhood who wants to comment on it, you'll have plenty of opportunities to do that. So I think with that, I am done. I don't know what time it is, how long I've been talking, but if there are any questions, if we have time, I'd be glad to answer.
So I've been collecting all the questions, Adam. First of all, thanks. I'm always fascinated by your presentations, and these landscapes that we drive around and walk around, and just to see what's happening underneath and at ground level, and it's just so fascinating. A couple of questions. Well, there's some comments, some questions. The first question was, where is all this located? But I think that person asked the question early on before you started showing all the maps. And so I think that question was answered. Somebody else commented that, Browse Avenue is pronounced like blouse, but with an R. So just so you know. Somebody asked, what is the difference between a creek and a run?
A run is a run in a creek and a brook and a stream. What else are they called? They're usually just smaller versions of rivers. In this area, we tend to call the bigger ones creeks and the smaller ones runs. In where I grew up in Connecticut and New England, the smaller ones are called brooks and the bigger ones are called rivers. Like the Pennypack would be a river in Connecticut. Here it's a creek. So it's just a way of naming things. I don't know where run came from. I guess just running water or something.
Okay. Somebody asked, how are watersheds delineated?
Watersheds are delineated by all the land. It's the outline of the land that sheds water into a particular stream, say in the case of Sandyron. So there'll be a high point at which the water will flow, and it's, if you think of the Continental Divide in the Rocky Mountains, all the water on one side flows to the Pacific, all the water on the other side flows to the Gulf or the Gulf Coast, basically. That's a huge example of watershed. But in the Sandyron watershed, somewhere above Run Avenue, there's a divide where the water flows into a smaller creek upstream of Sandyron, and then below it downstream, and then so it's a geographical boundary, usually based on topography.
Okay. Well, I think my wife asked, this one, is Sandyron named for Ralph Sandiford? I mean, Fred, you may have a better knowledge of that than Adam. But or Adam, you can chime in too. But
I have no idea. I thought it was just Sandy, but Sandy as in sand. But
right.
There are many Sandy runs, so I would say it's Sandy Run. There's Sandy Creek, Sandy Run. The fact that Ralph Sandyford lived there at that village of Sandyford was just a coincidence as far as I know, but I can't say that for sure.
All right. I think several of us would probably answer this one. Somebody asked, where do you get all the maps from?
Well, the one of the places is at the bottom of the screen now, the geohistory website, which was created by the Athenaeum of Philadelphia with the cooperation of a lot of city agencies and a lot of other libraries. They've accumulated maps and put them online, and you can zoom in on them. You can purchase them if you want. You can overlay them. You know, there's all sorts of different things. They also have so that's, if you're a member, you know, you can even get them to use in your talks like I do. So although I might just be a special member, since I also have brought a lot of business to their scanning, their digital imaging center that they have that does an amazing job scanning all these maps. So so that's one place, but you can go online and just about every library, the New York Public Library, the Boston Public Library, Harvard University, there's a David Rumsey collection. There's, every time I look online, there's more online, which is partly what I was saying that earlier, that when I get carried away trying to research the little minutia of one photograph, you can sort of lose yourself in a good way, unlike so many things on the internet, but you can lose yourself in a good way in a lot of these historical websites. The Library of Congress has an amazing collection too, and you can download high resolution pictures for free as a, you know, because it's been paid for by us already. You know, all the maps are ours as citizens, or even just as anybody. You know, you don't have to be a citizen. You know, it's on the internet for anybody to download. So you can, you see these things on eBay that are, you know, these map prints that are being, you know, from the 18th century being sold for $20. Those people are downloading them off the Library of Congress and then printing them and selling them. So.
Okay. I think this is a comment from Lou Leskus. He said, I will research the area east of Bustleton Avenue, east to the west side of Roosevelt Boulevard at Hartel, but I feel that this was still an open section. I think that was, you know, when you were talking about that one area where you were showing that bridge.
Okay.
Somebody asked, does Sandy Run connect with Pennypack Creek in more than one spot?
No, it's just the one. Usually creeks just have one mouth, unless you're the Mississippi River and you have a delta. You know, but Sandy Run is hardly the Mississippi, so it just has the one connection. There are other little creeks up and down the Pennypack that still exist in small ways but the Sandy Run just has the one place.
Okay. I'm not sure what this means. I guess it's maybe an inside message to you, Adam, from David Lugas. He said, I was looking in ERV as you were talking. I don't know.
Yeah, Irv is the engineering records viewer is what I was talking about earlier. Whoever that was works for the water department or for the city anyway, and has access to all of these plans and
right.
So
that's an inside comment. Okay. Well, from our friend Paul Steinke, he said, this is so interesting for me to see. Much of what Adam is showing is my childhood neighborhood. I grew up on Font Street near Dungan. I was aware of Sandy Run as a teenager, but I'm learning so much more tonight. Thanks, Adam. Somebody asked, what is the source of origin for Sandy Run? I guess that means like the mouth of it. Or...
No, probably the springs. There would have been springs up in Fox Chase that would have started as little tiny trickles, little rivulets, and then they would have started to come together and forming a bigger stream, and that would have been where they were. I haven't really gotten, you know, that would have been another level of detail, but there probably are maps that show that part of the city in detail that I could look at to find that.
Okay. Maureen writes, fascinating, not only the history of the development, but I am amazed at how large the sewer works under us. Somebody wrote, the neighborhood photos are so detailed they are worthy of a presentation themselves. Is the Water Department photo archive open to the public or available online?
Yeah, if you go to my website, phillyh2o.org, there should be a link somewhere there for the online catalog. If not, if you want it, on every page of my website, there's my email, and we do have an online collection of photographs. a lot of these photographs came from City Archives, the Philly History website, which, you know, the photographs they present are fairly small. They want you to purchase them. So, but if, you know, I love these old photographs, and I could do what I was doing with those few all day long, you know, just looking at the details. And so, you know, maybe, I don't know if you've ever done any presentation of the Connor collection, the postcard collection.
Well, we've used it, but I don't know if did we ever do one specifically on that, Fred?
Well, anyway, that's just
we did that back when it first came out about 10 years ago, but
yeah, maybe it's time to revisit that and add some other things or whatever.
Yes, good idea, Adam. Yeah. Okay. Next question. How long, all told, did it take to all of Sandy Run? I guess that meant into sewer. I mean, that's where it stopped, but I think he maybe means into the sewer.
Probably, it seems like, and maybe Lou could chime in on the chat here, but it seems like it started in the 1920s, or it just started whenever the boulevard was built, and then continued until the 1960s, you know, the early 1960s, it looks like. So 35, 40 years, and that's, well, 25 or 30, about 35 years, maybe a little more. And that probably reflects, one, that the whole neighborhood wasn't developed at once, so the sewer upstream was not built until later.
Lou Luskus, I think. Lou, are you there?
I'm fairly confident that from the railroad track bridge in 1952 that was featured early on to a point probably west of the line of, say, Penway Street, I think that was open until the early to mid 50s. I want to check that out. And I really want to check out the part from Bustleton to, I guess it would be Bradford Street, whether that was already sewered and it was just a bad job of sewering, or there was no inlets to the stormwater Glendale Avenue inlet. I just don't know, but I'm going to find out.
Yeah, well, we can look, check that contact number and do that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is Sandy Ford perhaps a road that led to a place where you could ford that waterway?
That's what I assume, is that Sandy Ford was the ford at Sandy Creek, Sandy Run.
Right.
And maybe Sandy Ford was a sandy ford, you know, not a rocky ford. You wouldn't want a rocky ford. You would want something smooth for your wagons. So maybe that's where the creek, the stream got its name from that.
I think Sandy Ford, there was a ford at Sandy Run at Bustleton Avenue. That would have been, and that's where the town became a village of Sandy Ford.
Okay.
Probably that's the reason it had the name Sandy Ford. A man named Ralph Sandy Ford, a well-known abolitionist in the 18th century, happened to live there. But I think that was totally coincidental, but I wasn't there then, so I can't really say for sure.
You weren't, Fred?
I was not. I tried to be, but Mom said no.
Also part of that question, who owned the waterworks before the city bought it?
It was privately owned. I'm not sure who individuals, but it was a private water company. And there were several, like I said, there were several others in this part of the city. Eventually they all consolidated, and then the city bought them all. Mainly, I think, to get their distribution system. They didn't need the pumping stations or the filter plants, but they wanted the distribution pipes.
I think Diston had a lot to do with it down in Tacony.
Yeah.
They did the water in Tacony, and Diston had something to do with it.
Then there was Philadelphia and Bristol, which was Bristol Town, the old Bristol Township, not Bristol Town, Bristol Bucks County. But so that's some of the information I'll tack on to this compendium that Fred started, and we have actually the deeds of title for all of these waterworks when the city bought them that I have to scan for some of the people who are doing the research. They're doing archaeological research in relation to the stream restoration that they're talking about doing. Actually, I found some Native American artifacts in that lower part of Sandy Run. So it's just, I was hoping to get that report in time for this talk, but it hadn't been finished yet.
Okay. Leslie Morris Smith posted the link to the past perfect photos of the water department. So if anybody's interested, if you go in the chat box, you'll see the link that Leslie posted. It's to the online low resolution historic images of the water department through the past perfect database.
I'll just say that anybody who wants to see any high resolution, anything, there's a way to, you can just put it in, there's a way to contact the water department, which goes to me on the website for each entry. So you could request it and then, send it. I'll email you and we can talk about it.
David, I can't pronounce his last name, the same guy who wrote about the ERV, wrote, would it be similar to what was done for Cresheim Creek a few years back? I think he's talking about the restoration project.
I'm not familiar with that project, but it would be basically they're just trying to slow down the flow. They're trying to put meanders back in the creek, and you could see from those drawings that they were doing, and trying to get it so it can spread out a little bit. So I'm not, if that's what they did in Cresheim Creek, then it would be the same. And I'm not the one to ask. If David wants to give me his email, I can put him in touch with the guy at the water department who's managing this whole project.
Okay. Just a bunch of, wonderful, thanks so much, very interesting. Thanks. I played along Sandy Run when I was growing up. I never knew of its hidden origin. Thank you. Very thorough presentation. Somebody wrote that Temple University has an extensive photo library of the city dating back at least a century. And then somebody else asked if there's a link to it. Adam, you might know it. Temple has some things digitized and online, but otherwise, I think you have to go and research in person, right?
Yeah, the Temple has a huge collection from the Bulletin, and I think they might even have the Inquirer library now.
Yeah, they have both. Yeah,
and the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, which I think is barely open anymore, has the Philadelphia Record Collection, newspaper collection. The Library Company and the Historical Society of Pennsylvania have amazing photo archives and image archives, not just photographs, but drawings and paintings and prints. So there's just, Philadelphia being such an old and such an important city, there's just a huge, not to mention the Free Library of Philadelphia, which I thanked at the beginning, but didn't mention, and the Athenaeum of Philadelphia. But the Free Library especially has a huge map collection, a lot of which is on the Athenaeum website, the geohistory site, and also their print and picture collection, which a lot of that has been digitized and online. So there's a lot out there to look at. And then just to also mention the Historical Society of Frankfurt, which has a huge collection of photographs, and is one of the reasons why it's hard to find Northeast Philadelphia photographs in other collections in the city, because so many of the people in the neighborhood gave them to the Frankfurt people. So, and that collection is pretty much unknown, not unknown, but it's not, I don't think much of it is online. I have a few things from the collection on my website, but I don't know what else it would be.
Yeah, they're not, like these major universities or repositories where they've digitized and put things online. But I know that, as you know, I know that collection pretty well. It's pretty amazing, the Frankfurt Historical Society. Another question. I understand there were mills along the Pennypack. How about Sandy Run?
I did not see any evidence of any dams or any mills along Sandy Run. There was a dam, it's supposedly a dam associated with the waterworks, but I think that Sandy Run was too small a stream. Even maybe because the Pennypack was so big and so powerful that no mill owner needed to go a mile away. But in the maps I've been looking at, it didn't seem like there were any mills.
Okay. Let's see, where was Sandy Ford Village?
Fred, you can.
Fred, you want to?
As you showed on one of your maps, Sandy Ford PO post office was at about Hartel, just up the hill from Sandy Run, and that was the village of Sandy Ford. Yep.
So near on Bustleton, Hartel and Bustleton.
On Bustleton Ave and Hartel.
So that Ford would have been probably down at Hartel then, it sounds like. Down the road. So.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Somebody chimed in about the Library Company of Philadelphia's photos, which are amazing. A lot of those they have a lot of digital photos online. Leslie Morris Smith also put some more links in the chat box of digital photo collections, Temple and some others. What a great presentation. And then I guess, well, we can end with this one. Somebody said maybe we should let Adam go get dinner.
Yeah, what time is it anyway?
Yeah, let's say 8:30.
About 8:30. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're eating European style,
Yeah, I know, that's okay. I've been eating all day long. So.
So, well, this has been phenomenal, Adam. Let's pick another stream and do it again next year. Maybe we love having your presentations.
Well, as long as Fred and Roland are willing to go out and show me a new stream, maybe Wooden Bridge Run or something like that.
And then my wife has been fascinated with Byberry Creek, and we've she and I have tromped all through that. That's another one where, we don't have access to the photos and maps and all that you do. We're sort of just boots on the ground with that one.
I did do a presentation on Questing Creek, which included some of Byberry about 15 years ago. So maybe it's time to update that one.
Yeah, dust that one off, and we'll do that one. So.
Great.
All right. Does anybody have any final questions? Or somebody just typed in, what about the Questing, which is what I just said. So maybe we'll revisit that next time.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Adam. Thanks, Fred, for all the work you do in putting all these together. And so we will meet again on January 6th. Which is the first Wednesday in January, as usual, at 7 o'clock. And that will be Fred will give the second part of his presentation on
Thomas Holmes map, the 1687 map.
The Thomas Holmes 1687 map. So have a great holiday, everyone. We'll be in touch by Facebook and email and all that, but we won't meet again until the new year. So. Many thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank
you, everybody.
Bye-bye.